Right now, your brain is quietly deleting most of the information your eyes are sending it. Not some of it, most of it. That sounds impossible. After all, it feels as though you're seeing everything around you. Take a moment and look around the room. It probably feels complete. Every object seems to be exactly where it should be. Nothing appears to be missing. Your experience feels effortless, almost perfect. But here's the surprising part. The world you're experiencing isn't the entire world in front of you. It's the version your brain decided was worth showing you. Think about something simple. A few minutes after getting dressed, you stop feeling your clothes against your skin. The ticking of a clock slowly disappears. The hum of your refrigerator fades into silence. Your phone has been sitting beside you for several minutes, yet you suddenly notice it again, only when it vibrates. Sometimes you're so absorbed in your thoughts that a friend walks right past you and you don't even realize it. Nothing changed. The sounds never stopped. Your clothes never disappeared. Your phone was always there. Your friend really did pass by. The only thing that changed was your attention. Or more precisely, what your brain decided deserved it. Here's something even stranger. At this very moment, you can probably see your own nose. It's been sitting at the edge of your vision every second of your life. Yet your brain has become so good at ignoring it that you rarely notice it's there. Not because it vanished, because your brain decided it wasn't useful. Think about that for a moment. If your brain can quietly erase your own nose from conscious awareness, what else has it been hiding? The truth is, your eyes are constantly delivering an astonishing flood of information, far more than your conscious mind could ever hope to experience. And yet, almost all of it is filtered out before you're even aware it existed. Which leads to a fascinating question. If the brain receives such an enormous amount of information every single second, why does it discard so much of it almost immediately? The answer reveals one of the most extraordinary principles of the human mind. Because your brain was never trying to show you everything. It was trying to show you only what it believed would matter most. Imagine for just 1 minute that your brain decided to stop filtering. Not forever, just for 60 seconds. Every sound, every voice, every color, every reflection, every smell, every movement, every sensation on your skin, every object at the edge of your vision, every tiny change in light, every vibration, every distant conversation, everything at once. It might sound like you would become more aware, but the opposite would happen. You would be overwhelmed. Within seconds, you wouldn't know where to focus. Because the problem has never been that the world contains too little information. The problem is it contains far too much. Every second, your eyes alone deliver an astonishing stream of visual data. At the same time, your ears detect hundreds of tiny changes in sound. Your skin constantly reports temperature, pressure, vibration, and movement. Your nose samples the air. Your muscles report the position of every limb. Even when you're doing absolutely nothing, your nervous system is incredibly busy. If your brain tried to consciously analyze every single signal equally, you wouldn't become more intelligent. You wouldn't become more observant. You wouldn't even be able to finish this sentence. Imagine trying to read every page of every book in a library at exactly the same time. The problem isn't that the books aren't interesting. The problem is there's simply too much to process. Your brain faces the same challenge every waking second, and evolution found a surprisingly elegant solution. The brain doesn't begin by asking, "What should I pay attention to?" It begins with a completely different question. What can I safely ignore? That single question changes everything. Because the brain's first job isn't perception, it's selection. Before you consciously experience a single moment, your brain has already made countless decisions. Ignore the humming refrigerator. Ignore the feeling of your shirt. Ignore the pressure of the chair. Ignore the cars outside. Ignore your nose. Ignore thousands of tiny visual details that are changing every single second. Only after this massive act of filtering does your conscious experience begin. Think about that. The reality you experience isn't everything your senses detect. It's what's left after your brain has removed almost everything else. In other words, your conscious mind doesn't begin with reality. It begins with an edited version of reality. And that raises an even bigger question. If your brain is constantly deciding what survives and what disappears, who, or rather what, is making those decisions? Most of us have spent our entire lives believing something that isn't true. We think our eyes work like a camera. Light enters, the brain records it, and consciousness simply watches what was captured. It feels obvious. It feels accurate. But that's not what your brain is doing, not even close. Imagine you're making a documentary film. You spend months traveling the world. Your cameras record 100 hours of footage. Busy streets, quiet forests, conversations, clouds moving across mountains, people walking by, thousands of beautiful moments. When filming is over, you sit down to edit. Would you release all 100 hours? Of course not. Most of it will never be seen. Not because it isn't real, not because it isn't beautiful, but because it doesn't help tell the story. So you begin making decisions. Keep this, cut that, slow this down, remove that conversation, use this reaction shot, skip the next 5 minutes. Little by little, a completely new experience begins to emerge. Not a fake story, not a false story, a carefully edited one. Now here's the remarkable part. Your brain does something astonishingly similar. Every second, it receives an overwhelming amount of information, far too much for consciousness to experience. So before you're even aware, the editing has already begun. This face matters. That face doesn't. This sound could be important. Ignore the rest. Follow that movement. Blur everything else. It isn't recording reality. It's producing a final cut. And just like a film editor, your brain isn't trying to include everything. It's trying to create the most useful story for this moment. That's why reality feels so smooth, so complete, so continuous. You never see the deleted scenes. You never notice the thousands of tiny decisions that shaped the moment you're experiencing. Imagine watching a movie without editing. Every mistake, every pause, every camera adjustment, hours of people doing absolutely nothing. It wouldn't feel more real. It would become almost impossible to watch. The editor doesn't remove reality. The editor makes reality understandable. Your brain faces the same impossible challenge. Every fraction of a second, it asks itself, what matters most? Everything else quietly disappears. And here's the unsettling implication. Every edit changes the story. Sometimes only a little, sometimes completely. Which means You aren't experiencing raw reality. You're experiencing the version of reality your brain decided was worth keeping. And that leads to an extraordinary question. If your brain is constantly editing the world, could it ever remove something so obvious, so enormous, that you would never even realize it was there? By now, you know your brain is constantly editing reality. But there's one experiment that reveals just how far that editing can go. It has become one of the most famous experiments in modern psychology. Because once you see it, you never think about attention the same way again. The experiment seems almost childish. You're shown a short video. Two teams of people pass basketballs to one another. One team wears white shirts, the other wears black. Your task is simple. Count how many passes the players in white make. That's it. Nothing complicated. Most people become completely absorbed. 1 pass, 2, 3. They concentrate, trying not to lose count. And then, something extraordinary happens. Halfway through the video, a person wearing a full gorilla costume walks directly into the middle of the scene. The gorilla doesn't hurry. It walks slowly, stops, faces the camera, beats its chest, then calmly walks away. The entire appearance lasts about 9 seconds. 9 seconds. An enormous gorilla standing in the middle of the screen. It should be impossible to miss. But when the video ends, participants are asked a simple question. Did you see the gorilla? A remarkable number answer, what gorilla? Not because they forgot it, not because they looked away, not because it happened too quickly. They genuinely believe there was never a gorilla at all. The first time you hear that, it sounds unbelievable. Surely they're joking. Surely no one could miss something that obvious. But they aren't joking. And that's exactly what makes this experiment so unsettling. The gorilla wasn't invisible. The image reached their eyes. Their retinas recorded it. The visual information traveled into the brain. The brain simply decided it wasn't important enough to enter conscious awareness. Psychologists call this inattentional blindness. When your attention is fully occupied, the brain can completely ignore something enormous happening directly in front of you. Think about what that means. The experiment was never really about a gorilla. The gorilla was only a prop. The real experiment was us. It revealed something astonishing about the human mind. We like to believe that seeing is automatic. That if something is large enough, bright enough, or obvious enough, we'll notice it. But the brain doesn't work that way. It doesn't ask, what is in front of my eyes? It asks, what am I looking for? And everything else can simply disappear. That single discovery changes how we think about perception. Because if your brain can erase a person in a gorilla suit standing in the middle of the screen, what else might it be removing every single day? How many opportunities never reached your awareness? How many details were edited out before you ever had the chance to notice them? Perhaps the greatest illusion isn't a magician making something disappear. Perhaps it's the quiet confidence that we see everything there is to see. Because the most astonishing finding was never the gorilla. It was discovering how much of reality our own brains can hide from us. If the gorilla experiment proved that your brain can erase something enormous, there's another group of people who have known this for centuries. Magicians, or more accurately, illusionists. Most people believe magic works because performers are incredibly fast, or because their hands move too quickly to follow. But professional magicians will tell you something surprising. Your eyes are almost never the problem. Your attention is. Imagine you're watching a magician holding a deck of cards. His right hand makes a dramatic gesture. Without realizing it, your eyes follow. In that exact moment, his left hand quietly performs the move that makes the trick possible. Later, you're convinced you watched everything. But you didn't. You watched exactly what he wanted you to watch. Magicians have a name for this technique: misdirection. Despite what the name suggests, it's not really about misdirecting your eyes. It's about directing your attention. Because wherever your attention goes, your awareness follows, and everything else becomes surprisingly easy to hide. That's why the greatest illusionists don't spend years learning impossible hand movements. They spend years learning how the human mind decides what matters. They understand something most people never realize. Attention is incredibly narrow. You can focus deeply on one thing, maybe two, but never on everything. That's not a flaw. It's simply how the brain works. Here's the fascinating part. Even after you learn how a magic trick works, you're often fooled all over again. Why? Because knowing the secret doesn't remove the limits of attention. Your brain still follows movement. It still reacts to surprise. It still prefers the obvious action while quietly ignoring the important one. The magician isn't defeating your eyes. He's cooperating with your brain. He's allowing your own attention to do the hiding for him. Think about that. Every successful magic trick depends on the same principle your brain uses every single day. Not just on a stage, but while you're driving, working, reading, talking, living. Reality itself is full of tiny acts of misdirection. Some created by other people, most created by your own mind. Perhaps that's why magic feels so impossible. Not because it breaks the laws of physics, but because it reveals the hidden rules of human attention. And once you understand those rules, you begin to realize something extraordinary. The greatest illusion isn't happening in the magician's hands. It's happening inside your own brain. Because magic exists, not because your eyes can be fooled, but because your attention has always been limited. Up to this point, we've been talking about the outside world, the things you see, the things you hear, the things your brain chooses to ignore. But what if I told you your brain doesn't just edit the world around you, it edits you? Right now, your shirt is touching your shoulders. Your socks are pressing against your feet. Your shoes are wrapped around your toes. Your back is resting against your chair. Your hands are touching whatever you're holding. And unless I just reminded you, you probably weren't aware of any of it. Not because those sensations disappeared. They're still there, exactly where they've always been. Your brain simply decided they weren't important enough to bring into consciousness. Here's another strange experiment. Without moving your eyes, become aware of your nose. You can actually see it right now. It's been sitting at the edge of your vision every moment of your life. And yet, most of the time, it's as if it doesn't exist. Your eyes never stopped seeing it. Your brain simply stopped telling you about it. Now listen carefully. Can you hear the air conditioner? The hum of your computer? A refrigerator somewhere in the house? Distant traffic? Maybe birds outside? Those sounds didn't suddenly appear. They've probably been there for quite a while. Your attention simply wasn't looking for them. The moment it did, they seemed to come alive. Think about what that means. Reality didn't change. The sounds didn't become louder. Your clothes didn't suddenly touch your skin. Your nose didn't move. Your chair didn't become harder. Only one thing changed. Your brain decided those signals were finally worth showing you. It's almost impossible to appreciate how extraordinary this is. Every second, millions of sensory signals continue flowing into your nervous system. Your body never stops reporting. Pressure, temperature, position, balance, touch, movement. Your ears never stop listening. Your eyes never stop collecting light. Your skin never stops feeling. But consciousness receives only a tiny selection. Imagine working in the control room of a massive television network. Thousands of cameras are broadcasting live at the same time. One camera watches a busy street. Another watches the ocean. Another follows a football game. Another shows a quiet forest. Hundreds more are capturing different parts of the world. Now imagine only one screen can be shown to millions of viewers. Someone has to choose. Not because the other cameras aren't working, not because the other images don't exist, but because there's simply no room to display everything at once. That's remarkably similar to what your brain does. Every second, it's directing the greatest live broadcast you will ever experience. Millions of signals arrive. Only a handful make it onto the screen of your conscious mind. And here's the most surprising part. If your brain stopped filtering even for a moment, your experience wouldn't become richer. It would become almost unbearable. You would feel every fold in your clothes, every tiny pressure inside your shoes, every hair touching your skin, every background sound, every microscopic movement. You wouldn't gain more awareness. You would lose your ability to focus. The brain's greatest act of editing isn't removing parts of the outside world. It's quietly removing parts of yourself. Not because they aren't real, not because they aren't important, but because, at this moment, they don't help you survive, learn, or act. Which leads to another remarkable question. If your brain is constantly deciding which sensations deserve your awareness, what rules is it following when it chooses what matters most? By now, we know that the brain is constantly filtering reality, but that raises an important question. How does it decide what deserves to reach consciousness? The answer is attention. Think of attention as the brain's most valuable currency. The world offers more information than the nervous system can process with equal depth, so the brain must constantly decide where to invest its limited resources. It cannot examine every voice, every movement, every face, and every sensation at once. Something must be selected, while almost everything else is pushed into the background. Imagine standing at a crowded party. Music is playing, glasses are clinking, several conversations overlap. Someone laughs behind you, while another person speaks directly in front of you. At first, the room feels like one enormous wall of sound. But within moments, your brain begins separating it. One voice becomes clear, the others fade into a meaningless background. Then, from somewhere across the room, someone says your name. You hear it immediately. For a moment, it feels almost impossible. You are not consciously listening to that conversation, yet something personally significant broke through the noise and captured your attention. This is commonly described as the cocktail party effect. Experiments show that people sometimes detect their own name even when it appears in a speech stream they were instructed to ignore, although this does not happen every time or for everyone. That detail matters. The ignored conversation was not fully absent from the brain. Some information continued to be processed outside conscious awareness. Your name carried enough personal significance to compete for access to the narrow stage of attention. A baby's cry can do something similar. It is difficult to treat as ordinary background noise because it may contain urgent information about an infant's condition. Research suggests that infant cries can interrupt ongoing thought, capture adult attention, and influence both cognition and brain activity. The same is true of sudden movement. You can be completely focused on a conversation, yet the instant something moves unexpectedly at the edge of your vision, your eyes turn toward it. The movement may be harmless, a curtain shifting, a bird taking flight, a person entering the room, but the brain gives it priority before you consciously decide whether it matters. Studies of visual attention show that abrupt appearances and the onset of motion can attract attention even when they are irrelevant to the task a person is performing. This makes evolutionary sense. For our ancestors, a sudden movement could reveal a predator. A cry could signal that a child needed help. Hearing your name could mean someone nearby was trying to warn you or communicate something important. The brain could not afford to process everything equally. It had to build a hierarchy. Unexpected movement moved upward. Human voices moved upward. Signals of distress moved upward. Anything connected to your goals, identity, relationships, or survival received a better chance of entering awareness. But attention is not controlled by one simple switch. It emerges from several interacting systems. Some signals capture it from the outside because they are sudden or intense. Other signals receive priority because of what you are currently trying to do. And some become important because experience has taught your brain that they matter. That is why the same sound can be meaningless to one person and impossible for another to ignore. A parent may wake instantly when their baby makes a quiet sound while sleeping through traffic outside. A musician notices one wrong note inside an orchestra. A driver reacts to a small movement near the road that a passenger never sees. The signal itself is only part of the story. The rest depends on the brain that receives it. And that reveals something profound. Attention is not merely a spotlight that illuminates an already complete world. It is part of the process that determines which world becomes available to you at all. Every moment, countless things compete for this limited resource. Most lose. A few are selected. And whatever repeatedly wins that competition begins to shape what you notice, what you remember, and what you believe matters. Which leads to the next discovery. If attention decides which parts of reality enter your life, then the things that capture your attention most often may eventually begin to feel like reality itself. There is a small experience almost everyone knows. You write an email, read it twice, and send it with confidence. A few minutes later, you open it again and immediately notice an obvious mistake. A missing word. A repeated sentence. A name spelled incorrectly. The error was there the entire time. Your eyes passed directly over it, yet somehow you did not see it. Then another person reads the same message and notices it within seconds. Why? Part of the answer is that reading is not a letter-by-letter inspection. The brain uses context, familiarity, and expectations to interpret language efficiently. As a sentence unfolds, readers generate expectations about what is likely to come next, allowing familiar language to be processed quickly without examining every detail with equal care. Most of the time, this is an advantage. Consider the sentence, "After the storm, the streets were covered in." Before the final word arrives, your mind is already preparing possibilities such as water, leaves, or debris. The surrounding words create a structure, and the brain uses that structure to narrow what it expects to see. This makes reading fast and fluid. Without prediction, every word would have to be decoded almost as if you had never encountered language before. But efficiency comes with a cost. When you read your own writing, you already know what you intended to say. You know the argument, the rhythm, and the missing word that should be there. That knowledge can guide attention toward the intended meaning rather than every character on the page. Your eyes receive the mistake, but your mind may continue along the path it expected. Not because the brain literally replaces the printed word with another one, and not because errors are always invisible. Instead, expectation can bias how deeply a familiar passage is inspected. Research on reading consistently shows that context and predictability influence how incoming words are processed. The same principle can appear in speech. You begin a sentence, choose the wrong word, and continue talking without noticing. A moment later, someone corrects you. Speakers do possess monitoring systems that compare intended speech with what was actually produced, but this monitoring is not perfect. Studies of speech production describe error detection as a comparison between expected and actual feedback, and some errors escape that comparison. This is why your own mistakes can be strangely difficult to detect. You are not approaching them as new information. You are approaching them with a prediction. And predictions are powerful because they tell attention what to expect, where to look, and what can probably be ignored. Imagine watching a familiar movie for the 10th time. You no longer examine every background object or every movement. You know the story, so your attention follows the story. Reading your own text can work in a similar way. You do not always read what is on the page. Sometimes you read the sentence you remember writing. That is also why changing the conditions can suddenly reveal errors. A passage may look different after several hours, on another screen, in a different font, or when read aloud. The content becomes slightly less familiar, forcing the brain to rely less on the expected version and inspect the actual input more carefully. The error did not become larger. Your prediction became weaker. And this leads to a much bigger discovery. The brain does not simply decide which objects deserve attention. It also uses expectations to shape how those objects are interpreted. It sees the letters in front of you, but it also brings the sentence it expects. It hears the words you said, but it also carries the words you intended to say. Perception is not created by incoming information alone. It emerges from a continuous interaction between what reaches the senses and what the brain already believes is likely to be there. Most of the time, this allows you to move through the world quickly and intelligently. But sometimes, the same system hides an error directly in front of you. Not because your eyes failed, because your brain was already one step ahead, looking not only at what was there, but at what it expected to find. And if expectation can quietly reshape a sentence, the next question is far more unsettling. How much of the visual world does your brain not merely ignore, but actively complete for you? So far, we've discovered something remarkable. Your brain is constantly filtering reality. It decides what to ignore, what to notice, what deserves your attention. But what if filtering is only half the story? What if your brain isn't just removing information, but also creating it? It sounds impossible. Yet modern neuroscience suggests that's exactly what's happening. Your brain doesn't simply present the world to your consciousness. It continuously reconstructs it, every second, without you ever realizing it. Let's begin with something astonishing. Right now, there is a hole in your vision. Not a metaphorical one, a real one. Each of your eyes contains a tiny region where the optic nerve leaves the retina, There are no light-sensitive cells there, no rods, no cones, no vision. It's called the blind spot. In theory, you should see a small black hole floating in front of you all day, every day. But you don't. Why? Because your brain refuses to leave empty spaces. Instead, it quietly fills them in. If part of a straight line passes through your blind spot, your brain draws the missing section. If a pattern continues, your brain extends it. If a color surrounds the empty area, your brain paints the gap. Not perfectly, but convincingly enough that you never notice anything is missing. Think about that. Your brain isn't showing you what your eyes captured. It's showing you its best guess about what should be there. And that's only the beginning. Now try another experiment. Hold your finger in front of your face. Move your eyes quickly from one side of the room to the other. Did you notice the blur? Probably not, but cameras would. Every time your eyes jump, they perform an incredibly fast movement called a saccade. You make these movements 3, sometimes 4 times every second. In fact, your eyes spend a surprising amount of the day moving rather than looking. If you watched the raw visual information entering your eyes, the world would appear to jerk, shake, and smear again and again. Instead, your experience feels perfectly stable. The room doesn't leap every time your eyes move. The walls don't shake. The people around you don't flicker across space. Some of this stability comes from the brain reducing visual sensitivity during eye movements, a phenomenon known as saccadic suppression, making us far less aware of the motion blur that would otherwise dominate our vision. At the same time, the brain combines information across many eye movements to build the stable visual world we experience. Research over the past several decades has shown that our sense of a continuous visual scene depends on these active processes, rather than on a single uninterrupted image. Your conscious experience isn't a continuous recording, it's a carefully assembled production, like a film created from thousands of individual frames. The remarkable thing is, you never see the editing. You only see the finished movie. And once again, your brain fills in what's missing. Imagine watching a movie with hundreds of tiny gaps between every frame. It would be distracting, almost impossible to follow. So the brain quietly connects one moment to the next. Not because that's exactly what the eyes received, but because that's the most useful interpretation. The same principle appears everywhere. When an object briefly disappears behind another object, your brain assumes it continues to exist. When part of a familiar face is hidden, your brain completes it. When shadows hide details, your brain predicts their shape. Again and again and again. Not because reality is incomplete, because the information arriving at your senses always is. And this leads to perhaps the most astonishing realization in this entire film. For most of your life, you've probably believed that your eyes show you the world, but they don't. Your eyes collect fragments. Your brain turns those fragments into reality. It deletes, it selects, it predicts, it fills the gaps, it smooths the motion, it constructs continuity. And only then does consciousness experience what feels like the real world. Perhaps the greatest illusion isn't created by magicians or by optical illusions. It's created every waking second inside your own head, because the world you experience is not simply the world your eyes detect. It is the world your brain has painstakingly built for you. And that raises one final question. If every person's brain is constantly building its own version of reality, Could two people standing in exactly the same place be living in completely different worlds? Imagine you're sitting in a courtroom. A witness walks to the stand. They raise their hand, take an oath, and say, "I saw it with my own eyes." Few sentences sound more convincing. After all, what evidence could be stronger than seeing something yourself? For centuries, courts around the world have placed enormous weight on eyewitness testimony. It feels direct, immediate, objective. But over the past several decades, psychologists have uncovered something deeply unsettling. Seeing something does not guarantee remembering it accurately. And remembering it accurately does not guarantee reporting it accurately. Not because people are lying. Most witnesses are completely sincere. They genuinely believe they're describing exactly what happened. The problem is, memory doesn't work like a video recording. It never has. Think back to everything we've discovered so far. Your brain filters information. It directs attention towards some things while ignoring countless others. It predicts. It fills in missing details. It edits reality before you're even aware of what you're seeing. Now ask yourself, what happens later when you try to remember an event that was never completely perceived in the first place? The answer is surprising. Memory doesn't simply retrieve the past, it reconstructs it every single time. Imagine witnessing a robbery. Everything happens within seconds. Someone shouts, people move, a car drives away. Your attention locks onto one detail. Perhaps the weapon, perhaps the person's face, perhaps the sound of breaking glass. While you're focused on that one thing, hundreds of other details never receive your attention. Hours later, someone asks, "What color was the driver's jacket? What did the second person say? Where exactly was everyone standing?" Your brain doesn't open a perfect recording. Instead, it begins rebuilding the event. Using the pieces it actually noticed, combining them with expectations, previous experiences, and bits of information that arrived afterward. This idea has been demonstrated repeatedly in memory research. The psychologist Elizabeth Loftus and colleagues showed that even subtle changes in the wording of a question can influence what people later report remembering. In one famous experiment, participants who were asked how fast cars were going when they smashed into each other later estimated higher speeds and were more likely to report seeing broken glass that had never existed. Think about how extraordinary that is. The question itself became part of the memory. Not because people wanted to lie, because memory isn't a file stored unchanged inside the brain. It's a reconstruction, built again and again, each time you remember it. This is why two honest people can witness the very same event and later describe different realities. One remembers the face, another remembers the sound. One recalls the color of the car, another is certain it was a different color. Neither person is necessarily being dishonest. Their attention was different. And because attention was different, the memories they later constructed were different too. Suddenly, the phrase, "I saw it with my own eyes," takes on a completely different meaning. Yes, the eyes may have seen it, but the eyes were never working alone. Attention decided what entered awareness. The brain decided what deserved to be kept. Memory decided how the story would be rebuilt. The final recollection is not simply what happened. It's what survived each stage of that process. And that leads to one of the most profound ideas in cognitive science. Your memories are not photographs stored inside your head. They are stories continuously reconstructed by the same brain that filtered reality in the first place. Which raises an extraordinary possibility. If attention shapes perception, and perception shapes memory, then perhaps the reality each of us experiences is far more personal than we ever imagined. By now, we've uncovered something extraordinary. Your brain filters reality. It edits reality. It fills in missing pieces. It reconstructs memories. But all of those discoveries lead to one profound conclusion. The reality you experience depends largely on what your brain chooses to notice. Imagine two people walking down the very same street. They leave the same building, take the same route, pass the same people, spend the same 20 minutes outside. Later, someone asks, "How was your walk?" The first person replies, "It felt depressing. The traffic was terrible. People looked angry. I nearly got hit by a cyclist. There was trash everywhere." The second person smiles. "It was beautiful. The weather was perfect. I saw children laughing. There was a street musician, and the sunset was incredible." Who's right? Perhaps they both are. They didn't walk through different cities. They walked through different versions of the same city. Not because the world changed, because attention did. Think about that. Every moment, the brain is making decisions. Notice this face. Ignore that one. Follow this conversation. Forget the others. Watch the bad news headline. Skip the flowers growing beside the sidewalk. Reality itself contains all of these things, but your conscious experience contains only the pieces that won the competition for your attention. Psychologists have long known that attention is influenced by emotion, experience, and expectation. Someone struggling with anxiety is often quicker to notice potential threats. Someone who has recently fallen in love may suddenly notice happy couples everywhere. A new parent hears every baby's cry. A photographer sees patterns of light that everyone else walks past. The world didn't suddenly change. The filters did. Now think about your own life. Have you ever bought a particular car and then started seeing that same model everywhere? It feels as though thousands of people bought the exact same car overnight. Of course, they didn't. Those cars were always there. Your brain simply decided they had become relevant. Suddenly, they survived the filter. The same thing happens with ideas. If you become convinced that people can't be trusted, your attention begins collecting evidence. One dishonest person, another disappointment, another broken promise. Soon, it feels as though everyone is untrustworthy. Not because your brain invented those experiences, but because it quietly ignored the hundreds of moments that pointed in the opposite direction. The same process can work in reverse. Someone who believes that opportunities are everywhere starts noticing possibilities that others never even consider. A conversation, a book recommendation, a chance meeting, a small idea. To someone else, they're meaningless. To them, they become life-changing opportunities. The world offered both people the same information. Attention selected different pieces, and those different pieces became different realities. This doesn't mean you can simply think positively and change the world. Reality still exists outside your mind. Danger is real. Loss is real. Beauty is real. Kindness is real. But no human being experiences all of reality equally. Each of us lives inside a version of the world constructed by attention. Perhaps that's why two people can leave the same event and remember completely different experiences. One remembers the criticism, the other remembers the encouragement. One remembers the failure, the other remembers what they learned. Neither memory is necessarily false. They're simply built from different pieces of the same reality. And that may be one of the most important discoveries in psychology. Your attention is not just deciding what enters your mind. It is quietly shaping the world you believe you live in, which raises an incredibly hopeful question. If attention helps build your reality, could you train it to build a different one? If everything we've learned is true, then one question becomes impossible to ignore. Are we trapped inside these filters? If your brain decides what to notice, what to ignore, and even what to reconstruct, does that mean the world you experience can never change? Fortunately, the answer is no. Because the human brain possesses one of the most extraordinary abilities in all of biology. It can change itself. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. For much of the 20th century, scientists believed the adult brain was largely fixed, that once it matured, its basic structure couldn't change very much. Today, we know something very different. Your brain is constantly adapting. Every new experience, every skill, every habit, every hour of practice changes the networks that determine what you notice. In other words, the filters themselves can be retrained. Think about a professional photographer. Walk through a city with a photographer, and something remarkable happens. You both stand in exactly the same place. You both look at exactly the same street. But after a few seconds, they point to something you never even noticed. The way sunlight reflects from a window, a shadow perfectly dividing a doorway, a child's silhouette framed between two buildings. To you, it's just another street. To them, it's already a photograph. The difference isn't their eyes, it's their attention. Now imagine a doctor examining an X-ray. To most of us, it's little more than shades of gray. But within seconds, the doctor notices a tiny abnormality, a faint shadow, a subtle change in the shape of a bone, a detail that could completely change a patient's diagnosis. The image never changed. Years of experience changed what the brain learned to notice. The same is true for musicians. Most people hear a beautiful orchestra, a trained conductor. Here's something else. One violin, slightly behind the beat. A trumpet, just a little too loud. A single note, slightly out of tune. The music entering their ears is identical. The brain interpreting it is not. Or consider a chess grandmaster. A beginner sees 32 pieces on 64 squares. A grandmaster sees patterns, weaknesses, future attacks, entire sequences of moves that haven't happened yet. Research has shown that expert chess players don't simply think faster. They recognize meaningful patterns that novices cannot yet perceive. Again, their eyes see the same board. Their brains see a different reality. Perhaps the most fascinating example is a child. Take a toddler into a garden. They stop every few steps. A butterfly, a tiny stone, a puddle, a leaf. Everything is new. Everything deserves attention. Now watch an adult walk through that same garden. They barely slow down. Not because the butterflies disappeared, not because the flowers became less beautiful, because the adult brain has learned to ignore what it already knows. Children experience a world overflowing with novelty. Adults experience a world filtered by familiarity. And that's one of the hidden costs of becoming efficient. The more predictable the world becomes, the less of it we consciously notice. But here's the encouraging part. Those filters are not permanent. When you learn photography, you begin seeing light. When you study music, you begin hearing structure. When you practice medicine, you begin noticing symptoms. When you learn astronomy, you start looking up. When you become interested in architecture, every city suddenly changes. The buildings were always there. The details were always there. Your brain simply learned they mattered. Which means learning is about far more than acquiring knowledge. Learning changes the reality you experience. Every new skill adds something that was previously invisible. Every year of experience reshapes the filters through which you see the world. Perhaps that's what expertise really is. Not seeing farther, not seeing better, but seeing what others don't yet know is there. And that leads to one final realization. If the brain can spend a lifetime changing its filters, then perhaps the reality you experience tomorrow doesn't have to be the same reality you experience today. After everything we've discovered, one final question remains. What if, just for a moment, your brain stopped filtering reality? No editing, no predictions, no attention, no filling in the gaps, no selecting what matters. Would you finally see the world exactly as it is? It sounds like the ultimate goal: complete awareness, perfect perception, absolute reality. But here's the surprising answer: no. And that's actually very good news. Because without those filters, your brain would stop functioning. Think back to where we began. Every second, your senses deliver an overwhelming flood of information. Millions of visual signals, thousands of sounds, endless sensations from every part of your body. Without filtering, none of those signals would have priority. Everything would demand equal attention. Imagine opening 10,000 browser tabs on your computer at exactly the same time. Every tab starts playing a video. Every speaker turns on. Every notification appears. Nothing is organized. Nothing is prioritized. Would you understand more? Or would the entire system simply collapse? Your brain faces that challenge every waking second. Filtering isn't a shortcut. It's a necessity. Without it, you couldn't read this sentence. You couldn't follow a conversation. You couldn't recognize a familiar face in a crowd. You couldn't drive a car. You couldn't learn a new skill. You couldn't finish a single thought. In other words, the brain doesn't filter reality because evolution made a mistake. It filters reality because consciousness depends on it. Think about what consciousness really is. At any given moment, your brain could make you aware of millions of different things. Yet somehow, it creates one coherent experience. One conversation, one melody, one idea, one face, one moment. That unity is only possible because almost everything else has been left outside of awareness. Perhaps consciousness isn't the experience of everything. Perhaps consciousness is the art of choosing one tiny part of everything. That changes the way we think about perception. The brain isn't trying to build a perfect copy of the universe. That would be impossible. Instead, it's trying to build the smallest possible model that still allows you to survive, to understand, to decide, and to act. It's an extraordinary compromise. You lose almost all of reality. In exchange, you gain a mind capable of making sense of the part that matters most. And perhaps that's one of evolution's greatest achievements. Not bigger eyes, not sharper ears, not faster reflexes, but the ability to transform an infinite world into an experience simple enough for a conscious mind to understand. Which leads to one final realization. Perhaps the question was never, how can I see everything? Because no human brain ever could. Perhaps the real question is, what kind of world have my filters allowed me to experience? Because the answer to that question may explain far more about your life than the world itself. Let's return to where this journey began. At the beginning of this film, I told you something that sounded almost impossible. Right now, your brain is deleting most of the information your eyes receive. After everything we've explored, that idea no longer seems quite so impossible. Because now we know it goes much further. Your brain doesn't simply filter reality, it edits it, it predicts it, it fills in the gaps, it reconstructs memories. It decides what deserves your attention and what quietly disappears. Long before the world reaches your consciousness, it has already been transformed. Which means there is something both beautiful and deeply humbling about being human. You have never seen the whole world, not once. Not as a child, not today, not for a single second of your life. And you never will. Not because your eyes are inadequate, not because your brain is broken, but because no conscious mind could ever contain the infinite complexity of reality. Every moment, your brain must decide, show this, hide that, keep this memory, discard that sound, complete this shape, ignore that movement. Millions of tiny decisions made silently every second. Without them, you couldn't understand the world. But because of them, you never experience the world in its entirety. Perhaps that's why the most important question has quietly changed. It's no longer, what am I seeing? Perhaps it has become, what has my brain decided not to show me? How many ideas have remained invisible simply because you never learned to notice them? How many moments of beauty passed quietly by while your attention was somewhere else? How many opportunities were hidden, not from your eyes, but from your awareness? And perhaps there is another question, even more important. If your attention is constantly shaping your reality, then what kind of reality are you teaching it to build? Because every day, your brain becomes better at noticing whatever you repeatedly pay attention to. Fear or curiosity, problems or possibilities, noise or meaning. Not because the world changes, but because your filters do. Perhaps that is one of the greatest freedoms we possess. We cannot choose whether the brain filters reality. It always will. But little by little, through what we learn, what we practice, what we value, and what we choose to notice, we can reshape those filters. We can teach the brain to see what it once ignored. And maybe that is what learning has always been. Not collecting more information, but discovering more of the world that was already there. In the end, the goal was never to see everything. That was always impossible. The goal is to understand that reality is infinitely larger than the small window through which consciousness allows us to look. Because attention is limited, we can focus. Because we can focus, we can learn. We can create. We can dream. We can love. We can build civilizations. We can write music. We can ask questions about the universe and about ourselves. Human consciousness exists not despite these filters, but because of them. And perhaps that is the final paradox. The very mechanism that hides most of reality from us is the same mechanism that makes our experience of reality possible. So perhaps wisdom doesn't begin when we finally see the world exactly as it is. Perhaps wisdom begins the moment we realize that no one ever has. And from that moment on, we stop asking, "Is this the whole world?" and instead ask, "What else might still be waiting just beyond the edge of my attention?"